hope I pronounced your last name right.
Um,
I think we're live now. So my name is Kenzie Dodds, and I'm here with Dan Abramov. Is that how you say your last name?
yeah, yeah, you could say that. It doesn't.
You're just being nice. So I just to give quick background of what this is all about. I watched Dan's. Well, I've been watching what Dan's been doing for a little while now. And I saw your talk at React Europe and was like crazy impressed. And like I've been really interested in React, but at work I use Angular, and I'm really big in the Angular community and do a lot of Angular things. But I've become a better Angular developer because of my time with React and watching the things that people like you are doing, Dan. It makes me a better JavaScript developer in general, I think. And so anyway, I noticed that you were doing a lot of really cool things for developer experience, and was curious about a couple of the projects that you're working on. So I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to, or for me to learn about what it is that you're working on, for you to reach out to people who were interested in learning about the things that you're working on. So
Okay. Okay. Sure.
do you want to give a quick intro to yourself and how you got into React before we actually get into
Yeah.
talking about developer experience stuff?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. So my name is Dan Abramov, and I really got into JavaScript like a few years ago, 3 years ago maybe. And before that, I was working on some native stuff. Before that, some desktop stuff. So I was pretty new to JavaScript world in general. And we just wrote, I was working at a startup before, which is called Stampsy, and we were working on a complex iPad application with drag and drop editor for magazine-like layouts, so you can like create your own magazine, uh, things like that. And we started working on the web version, so I needed to learn JavaScript, JavaScript tooling, JavaScript ecosystem, and I was really horrified, to be honest, by how hard it is to make an app in JavaScript. Because coming from iOS background and before that Windows background, I was spoiled by UI libraries available. They had all these pre-built controls and MVC frameworks, whatever. You always had something that you can build an app with. But as soon as you get into web development world, as soon as you need something more complex than a page, like you want a model window with some tabs on it, and these tabs, they have combo boxes and buttons and pop-ups, and it's so hard to do. Like it was crazy. I thought I don't want to do that anymore. But at some point, a colleague of mine, he showed React to me, and I was like, oh, HTML and JavaScript, this just can't work. This is crazy. But I actually got back to React after a while. Like he showed it to me once again in a few months. And this time he said, like, I think this is a cool thing. Take a good look at it. And at the same moment, I had a task where I needed a button to update in several places. We had backbone models at the time, and it was pretty tricky to set up. It had many different states, and it was hard to do that manually. And I tried React, and this small piece of the application, it just worked. And I was like, wow, we need to bring this higher and higher until our whole application is written in React. So that's actually what we did. It took us maybe 9 months to get there. But in the end, we rewrote everything in React and were super productive because of that. So that's how I fell in love with React. That's how I started contributing to open source, because I found that there is an ecosystem around React, but it's not fully formed yet, and I wanted to help make it happen.
So was your first intro into like open source with React, was that React Router? I noticed you've been contributing to that a lot, or what was it?
Actually, I'm not sure I remember my earlier projects. Like, maybe I wrote some code in the very beginning that I don't remember. But in fact, I think React Loader was the first project that really it really people started retweeting it and sharing it. It was a crazy experience for me because I never had anything like this. Like I'd have 20 stars maximum on GitHub, so it just went through the roof. And I was okay. So there is a need for that. People want something like this. So I should work on stuff that people want, not on the stuff that I just think might be helpful to someone. And this is actually really hard for people who want to get into open source development, but they're not sure. They write like another Express, or they write another HTTP library. And I'm not saying these are not important problems, but I think what was really a big lesson for me is that I need to go after the developers. I need to follow people on Twitter, on GitHub. I need to figure out what their pain points are and try to solve them. So yeah.
Cool. So I'm actually curious about that. Before we actually start talking about the projects themselves, what is it that drives you to, like, you say that you need to go out to the developers and find their pain points, but, well, maybe things are a little bit different for you, but before, like, you weren't getting paid for any of that stuff. Like, what was it that drove you to want to find out what the pain points of development was in an open source context?
I think, of course, I'm trying to solve my own problems first. So when I say go after what other people want, what I really mean is that understand you need to fit into a certain community, and it's likely that a certain community at some point of time, they all have the same kind of problems. So you need to learn about those problems, but it's likely that you're going to have them yourself if you build something serious. So I was building something serious. I was building. It was really hard for me because it was my first real complex application, complex piece of code that I have to structure and so on. So I think that this is the wall that I hit. Like it was really hard to build a real app with JavaScript. And if I thought that by investing a week of my time into building tools, I'm able to then cut 2 weeks later, then I'm doing that. And I'm telling my manager, like, I want to do that, come on. And if people don't agree, yeah, I'm going to put some nights into it just to make it happen, if it's possible, because it's not healthy. Like, I'm not, I don't advocate this crazy lifestyle developer thing when you code at night. I don't think it's healthy, but I do that sometimes just to get over the initial resistance.
Totally. I think many of us can relate to that. That's cool. Okay, let's actually, let's talk about the stuff that I think people will be most interested in. And before I get started, anybody who's watching live can tweet #DXQuestions if you have any questions for Dan about the projects that he's working on and things that he's doing. So yeah, since the React Hot Loader was your first project, why don't we go ahead and talk about that? And actually, maybe you can decide, but maybe it would make sense to talk about your React Europe talk as well, and what that was all about. Reference people to there.
Yeah, sure. So React Hot Loader, as I said, is my first project that really took off. And the idea was that I took React on the one hand, and I took Webpack on the other hand. And Webpack is a build tool. It's kind of like Browserify, but it has a fancy feature called hot model replacement, which is pretty experimental and crazy, but it worked. So when I first read the docs about it, I was like, wow, I can combine these two things because they kind of can work together. And the idea of hot model replacement is that you edit some code, you press save, and instead of reloading your whole application, it's going to replace just specific JavaScript modules. But it's kind of tricky because JavaScript code has side effects. So if your modules have, I don't know, some API calls inside them, or if they register something and you need to unregister it later, it's not so easy to just replace something. They have local state. And Webpack, it has an API for dealing with these kind of things. Like it lets you specify how a specific module can be replaced with a new version of itself. But of course, nobody cares to actually use that API because you want to work on your app. You don't want to spend time working on getting some crazy live reloading working. So it's not exactly something you want to do manually. But the nice thing about React is that React lets you write components declaratively. It lets you write a render function that specifies how your DOM looks like. And not just the DOM, it lets you specify how your component tree looks like. In browser, that's the DOM. On iOS, that's a React Native. But the big idea is that since it's declarative, since the side effects are pushed to the edge of your application, the React calls the DOM methods, but you don't do that really in React. So it's possible to replace these declarative parts at runtime, and that's what I tried to do with React Loader. I just combine the strong sides of React and Webpack to create the kind of live editing environment that if you watch Brett Victor's talks, that's the kind of thing I'm inspired by. And I know Brett Victor's hates people who try to implement his ideas because they never do it the right way. They just take one, like live reloading, and they ignore completely the rest of his ideas, which are sometimes much more important. But we move one step at a time. So that's something I wanted to contribute and get people to think about and tinker with, and to set a new standard for what development environment should feel like. Because once you're on this standard, even if you're not going to use React Loader anymore, you want your library to support that. You don't want to go back. And that was what it's about. And my React Europe talk, it was about React Loader and Redux, which is a library I'm working on right now. And Redux, it's an attempt to do the same for the model layer, for the data transformations layer, where you specify how your data is changing over time. It's kind of similar to Flux architecture, but I tried to simplify some bits of it, but retain the essence of the Flux architecture and its strong sides. So I tried to write a Flux library compatible with hot reloading, compatible with changing stuff as you work on it, and seeing the results without refreshing the page.
So yeah, I highly recommend that you go look up that talk. Maybe I'll link it in the description of this video later. But it was very, very amazing talk. That's a huge frustration I know for me and a lot of other developers, is that refresh cycle, and especially if what you're working on has a lot of state involved with it. So I have to click here and go here and fill out this form and then click this thing. It is such a pain point. And me as an Angular developer, I don't think that I have any hope in the world to be able to use hot reloading. It just doesn't. I don't think it would work. I don't know. Maybe you have.
Maybe somebody will make it work. I don't know.
But I would be way impressed if anybody can make it work, because Angular is just a little bit of a different beast in the way that it interacts with the DOM and state. Yeah, so the ability to the fact that React components are just functions, and if you make them stateless, then making something like this, yeah, that's super awesome. So I actually, as a experiment over this last weekend, I tried out React Hot Loader, and it took me 20 minutes to get it set up on a new project. It was really, really easy. So if anybody watching or listening or whatever is thinking about it, just go ahead and do it, and you will love it. So also Redux. So in your talk, you kind of described about how Redux and Flux are a little bit different. So do you want to talk about what makes Redux maybe a preferred implementation than other Flux implementations?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. So I'm not really trying to sell you this thing, but I think it has some objective benefits from what I've observed working on a vanilla Flux app. As I said, I worked on Stampsy, which is it has this social layer where you have subscriptions, people following each other, you have this feed, you have a drag and drop post editor, so that's a lot of state you have to manage. And we used Flux as soon as it came out. We were on Backbone before, but we started hitting limits with what's possible with Backbone, because it's really opinionated about data fetching, like fetching next pages. It doesn't have pagination, but it has this fetch method which is tied to REST, but we didn't use REST exactly the same way that Backbone used it. So it was really hard with Backbone to get it to work just like we wanted. We went with Flux, but Flux also, it was great in some regards, but it disappointed us in other things. And one of the most common frustrations with Flux is that it does not really work on server with singleton stores. Like you can make it happen, but it's tricky. And many of the Flux libraries are trying to solve that. Then some people say that there is a lot of boilerplate in Flux, which I'm not sure I agree that switch statements are boilerplate. I don't think that's the main problem. You can always write your own helper to use object maps instead of switch statements. But I think that the real problem I had with Flux is aggregating stores. Like you have many stores, and you have other stores that depend on them, and you have to combine event emitters, and the event emitters don't compose very nicely. You have this wait for method that lets you declare dependencies between stores, but it also kind of gets messy. So one of the main, I think, pain points again was pagination. I wanted to have reusable pagination for my Flux stores because I had many stores that had pagination, but they reacted to different actions, and I wanted to abstract it away. But it's very hard to abstract something away in Flux, because in Flux, a store really is two things. It's a handler that handles an action, it's a callback, and on the other hand, it's an event emitter that is like related, intimately bound to the function. So a store is not a single entity, and it makes very hard to reuse and compose Flux stores. So that's the kind of problem I was thinking about a lot. And on the other hand, I was thinking about autoloading and getting ready for my conference talk and how I can feed autoloading with Flux. And then local state, the fact that Flux stores have local state, it was also problematic for autoloading. So with these several problems, I tried to look like, what can I strip away from Flux? What can I remove to make it easier to work with? And what I came to is that I really don't need the event emitter. All I need is a function. And that function does not need to modify the local state. The function just needs to tell how the state is transformed by an action. And that's kind of the essence of Flux store. Every Flux store I ever wrote looks exactly the same. It has this pattern hidden inside it. Like you have to remove stuff and you see this pattern, so that there is a state and an action comes in. And what is the new state that is going to, this action has changed? So as soon as you add immutability to the mix, as soon as you promise that all data in your stores is immutable, that if you want to make a change, you have to make a new object. And you don't have to use immutable.js for that. You can just use ES7 spread syntax. It's super convenient. You can use React add-ons update helper. It doesn't really matter. But what matters is that if all state is replaced instead of mutated in place, you really can get away from event emitter. Because right now, the library, Flux library, can hold the state somewhere inside it, and it can give it to your functions, and then take the new state as the result and save it. So you don't have to save the state yourself. And it turns out that this enables you to write less code. It enables you to write instead of stores, you write what I call reducers, because state, action to state, its signature is similar to what you pass through array reduce function. Actually, if you take an array of actions and you reduce them with your reducer function, you're going to get the result state. So it's kind of Flux as a reduce operation. And it turns out that if you do that, not only you have less code, but also you are able to build really powerful debugging tools like a development session, the kind of stuff that I showed at React Europe. You have this developer panel that shows all the actions, and you can toggle them one by one. You can go back, or you can disable a particular action, or if there is an error thrown, you can catch that error in DevTools and display it. And once you fix it, it is able to reevaluate your reducer code, your new reducer code, against those actions. So it's like REPL for Flux. And this is only possible if you use pure functions. So as much purity as possible. That's the key to having nice things.
Yeah, I think that's what you've been able to accomplish by having stateless functions, and like that is just a testament to the why statelessness is such a good idea. Move state as like far away out as possible. Take all the things that you need as arguments. You know, inputs, outputs. It's always what you expect, and it's really cool what you've been able to build. So I don't want to just kind of rehash your talk, because I totally recommend people go look at that talk. It's very impressive, and it probably will make a little bit more sense actually seeing the code and seeing the tool. So what about the Redux Dev Tools? Like what still needs to happen before it's actually released, or has it been released? I haven't seen any.
Yeah, I actually released 0.10 a few days ago, like 2 days ago. I don't really want people to use it as is. I want them to give it a try. It's still it's not complete as like in my talk. I show some stuff that is not there yet. I have this error handling on React Loader level, where if you make a typo in your render method, it's not going to throw, it's just going to paint some red rectangle saying type error or something. You fix it, is back again. So that's kind of the missing piece for the workflow I envision. And I plan to bring that to React Loader in the next few weeks. But right now I'm focused on getting Redux 1.0 out, because there's source-wise, it's ready, but there's a lot of documentation to write. And people, right now, the documentation is a total mess. It's kind of like the React router situation right now. So it's the same kind of mess. I'm going to fix it, I promise. Give me another week or two. But yeah, Redux Dev Tools repo is up. You can check it out. It has the same kind of sidebar that I demoed at React Europe. But the nice thing about it is that I separated the visual aspects from the like the core code, the logic code, and I let you Redux Dev Tools, they ship with 2 components, actually 3, it doesn't matter. There is a generic DevTools component that shows something, and that handles the logic, but it doesn't specify how to render it. So there is one renderer by default. It's called log monitor, because it's a log. It's essentially an action log. You can click on actions to toggle them. You can see the states in between, but you don't have to use it. Like if you're working on some I don't know, animation app, and you just want a slider that you want to drag to see the past states, you can totally build your own monitor component and pass that to Redux Dev Tools. You can do that. It's going to work. It's really cool. I want to build a few examples of different monitors possible, so people actually feel like, hey, this is not hard to build. The interface for this thing is just a React component. I can put my own React component there. I can actually take a day off and maybe build a monitor that works best for my app, and I know where to put it. Maybe I have a sidebar in my app already, and I'll just stick it there. I mean, you can take some time to build tools for yourself. It's not something bad to do. You can tell your manager that you need to be productive. You need to spend the day working on this thing. So this is something I want to encourage people to experiment with, because I'm not going to be able to build a fancy monitor that works perfectly with your app, but actually you can do that. You know your app better than me. And I want to really encourage people to build their own tools and give them tools in order to do that. That's kind of my intent. I don't know if it's going to work out. Maybe it's a crazy idea, an experiment, but I want people to try.
I think that's a good idea. I am the author and maintainer of Angular Formally, which is a forms library for Angular, and it ships with it doesn't know what an input field looks like. It just handles all the logic, putting the fields in the right place, and then people implement their own input field, because that's kind of your own design and that kind of thing. And then there are other libraries that have kind of some defaults that look good for most people, like Bootstrap and stuff. So I totally get what you're talking about. I think that's a really good approach to decouple that, and I think that's cool you've done that. So what? I feel like I've kind of lost. Oh, what about like Chrome Dev Tools or Firefox Dev Tools? Like, are you planning or expecting that you'll be able to have a Chrome extension that people can just install and have work, or is that something that would be possible?
Okay, I think that right now we're focusing on getting this working inside a single app because I know that most Flux libraries have these as add-ons, like for Chrome, but it's so hard to make an add-on. Like I looked at their code and it's a mess, and not because the authors are bad or something, but it's because the API is a mess. It's expecting like a normal HTML page, and it's expecting you to write code to connect and disconnect when you change the tab. It's not really suitable. It's not easy to get it to iterate on it. It's really hard to iterate in it, and it's found that in Redux Dev Tools case, I was able to whip it up so fast because I actually used hot reloading while I was working on it. So I used hot reloading to build tools for hot reloading, which is pretty cool. And this allowed me to iterate much faster. And because what I want to happen in this space is exploration. I don't want people to use one dedicated tool. If I just gave them a Chrome extension, we'd be stuck with it forever. Like nobody would write an alternative because it's just so much pain. But if it's just a component that you can hook up, you can change it, then maybe people are going to come up with alternative, better ideas. So that's kind of what I want to focus in the beginning. And of course, there is another aspect to that, which is async. If you want to write, I don't want to lock people into Chrome as much as I like Chrome. I want them to be able to use Firefox or Safari or debug Internet Explorer 9 running inside a virtual machine, which is, by the way, possible with the React Hot Loader. You can edit your stuff and see IE something, refresh parts of the page.
That's so cool.
Very handy for debugging. So I don't want to lock people into Chrome APIs. So if I want to build something like this, I think I build a remote debugger that is just a React application, and that you can put inside anything you want. You can put it inside DevTools panel or inside Chrome or run in a separate window or friend's computer. It has to work asynchronously. It has to work with WebSockets or something like this. So yeah, that's something I envision. I'm not sure I'll have the time to work on it, but the way I see Redux 2.0 is somehow tackling the problem of asynchronous flux over the wire. If you watched Eli Rothenberg's talk about flux over the wire, the adapters he built on top of Flux so that the Flux code, the state, can live on another computer, but you use the same mental programming model. You dispatch actions, they fly somewhere, and then the state comes back. And it kind of, there are a lot of edge cases, there are a lot of tricky implementation details to get it working fast and everything. But he used that to scale like to a crazy count of users for multiplayer interface. I think it was a multiplayer game. So that's something I want to explore with Redux too, because maybe it's out of scope of Redux. Maybe this kind of thing is just not what Redux is for, but maybe we can, I don't know, make it work with with the Redux ecosystem. And in this case, the case of dev tools running somewhere separately, it's like exactly the same thing. Your app becomes the client, but the server is there because it decides what the real state is. So yeah, we might work on that, but maybe I won't be the one to lead it. I don't know.
Cool. I think actually you're giving us, or at least giving me, a lot more than I bargained for. Lots of the concepts and ideas that you're talking about with just kind of giving it into the hands of the developer who has a lot more context about their app and how these developer tools apply to their app, I think is a good thing. And anybody who doesn't have like little scripts or some things that they run only in development, like you really need to do that. Like you should never be logging into your application yourself. You should write a little JavaScript script that does that for you. You know, like just simple things like that that really help your development lifecycle. So I think that's a good idea, a good approach for Redux Dev Tools. So good on you. That's cool. So what about so you've already started talking about Redux 2.0 and so that's kind of interesting. Do you want to talk about that at all?
I was just thinking, what's the next thing for Redux, because it's the first project that I built and I'm working on that I kind of see the end of, which is a good thing. There was an article, I think a few weeks ago on Hacker News, and I don't really read Hacker News, but I did that day, and I was glad to read it. It was called "Finish Your Stuff," and it was a rant, a justified rant about the state of open source projects, where people just get overexcited and they commit to something that they're not able to ship like ever, because it's like never done. There is always work to do. And we have these half-assed developer tools that are a library that's going to iterate, and it never delivers because it's just too much work for a single or maybe 10 people. I don't know, but it's just too much work. And that's something I don't want to end up with Redux. I want to see the end of it. And the strange thing about 1.0 is that we released the release candidate a few days ago. It's feature complete pretty much. We split the projects that we're not sure how to, that are more experimental. We split them out. For example, we split the React bindings because there's much more work on stabilizing the API there. We want to have a better API story, but it's not related to the core. So we split that. And right now it seems like Redux is, is just a few utility functions that come together, and it's really not about having a framework. It's more about having a set of contracts. Like, what is a reducer function? It's a function that accepts this and this and returns this. What is this thing? It does that. So you have these contracts that you write in your app, and you don't use any privileged APIs to do that. You just implement the contracts. And Redux kind of binds these contracts together. It's like the minimal glue to get these contracts to do something useful. And it turns out that you don't really need much more than that, because you can build things on top. And I'm not a modularity crazy fan. Like, I don't want to split every single file into separate projects like sometimes people do. I don't think it's convenient for versioning. Maybe I'm just old. I don't know.
I'm on the same page. Modularity is good, but you need to be careful.
To a certain degree, yeah. But so I'm not doing it for just modularity's sake. But it turns out that it's better to push some things you're not sure in separately, because people can come up with better solutions. And maybe when you're sure in some of the solutions, you can bring them back. But you don't want to lock people into bad APIs. So what I was saying is that Redux 1.0 kind of is finished to me. I understand what it does, and it's ready. So I thought that maybe it's the end of Redux. Like maybe we don't need anything else. We can just build things on top and on side. But then I chatted with Eli Rothenberg from Flux of the Wire talk at React Europe. He also gave the talk. You should watch it. And I thought that maybe this is one problem that is pretty close to Redux core, like an alternative interpretation of what dispatch and what state means. And it's tricky because all state is not available. If state lives on server, it's not available all the time. And maybe it's a different problem. Maybe it's not Redux at all. Maybe it's remote Redux, Remux. I don't know. But maybe it's Redux 2.0.
So
yeah. So if there is anything that can be Redux 2.0, I think solving this problem is what it can be. But maybe there won't be Redux 2.0 ever. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's a good pro tip. Finish your things and don't make them solve every single use case. See if you can just hand that over to the developer who's got more context about their app.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I actually, one other thing I wanted to ask about Redux, I noticed you were asking if somebody would be willing to build an Angular 2 bindings for Redux. So has that actually happened? I noticed Patrick JS was interested in doing that.
Yeah, he made a pull request actually with Angular to do example in Redux, and it kind of surprised me that it looked pretty similar to the React version, which is probably good. But I'm not going to accept the pull request as is because it commits a few thousand files into the repository, which I presume are necessary to get Angular working.
Yeah, Angular 2 is not quite ready for something like that, I think.
Yeah, but I definitely want to have official bindings for Angular, so that's something I'm going to discuss there. And since we split React bindings into a separate repo, we can create an organization and we can put semi-official bindings and stuff that we really care about. We want to support that. We can put it there under the same roof. And I want to have the only problem with the pull request is that it just shows how to implement an Angular app, but it doesn't have the same bindings as React. It doesn't have these what would correspond to higher order components. Like it doesn't have the utilities necessary for a larger app. So what I want to do is I want to talk to Patrick there, and maybe we'll figure out how to approach the API of these bindings themselves. But yeah, I want it to be like it's such a small library. Again, in not the modularity sense, but it turns out that it's small. It just happened this way. And I want people from different ecosystems to take a look at it and maybe start structuring the code this way, because it's really cool that you're not going to port your whole view layer to something else probably, but it's still cool that you don't code against APIs. You code against these simple contracts. And if you're going to move off Redux at some day, it's probably going to be really easy. And I don't want to lock people in. I want them to go to different ecosystems. Maybe there's something like that takes ideas from Relay and Redux or builds on top of them. Please go use it. I'm happy. Your code is not going to be locked in because you're not using APIs. And it's the same with other ecosystems like Ember and Angular. I want people to try it, and they can use the same developer tools that we use.
That's great. I think that's a really good philosophy for anybody building a library. Try to make it a JavaScript library, not a framework library. Yeah. Cool. So I noticed you had a Redux Thunk just with a couple of commits on it. And do you think that's interesting enough to chat about, or is that not really a thing, or is that more of
it's kind of not really a thing, but I still can talk about it in context of what we're actually going to break.
Yeah, you can talk about what a thunk is. I don't think everybody is really familiar with the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't familiar either. I first saw this word in the core documentation. I was like, what the hell is thunk? Are there some computer science types that want to, you know, humiliate us, poor developers? But it turns out that a thunk is just a function that returns a function, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah, and what we have in Redux is this concept of middleware, and it's one of the extension, like the most common extension point for Redux. It's what the ecosystem is about in a lot of ways. A lot of people try to write middleware for Redux, and the reason we I think Andrew Clark came out, the Flummox guy came out with this idea of middleware, and the reason for it is that everybody tries to, every Flux library has its own way of dealing with async actions. So if you have these action creators that create raw actions, the objects, because deep down in Flux, everything, every action has to be an object. But before objects are ready, sometimes you have some async process that emits them. And here is where people have different opinions, because some of them want to use a Rex for everything, observables all the way, and it's a great abstraction for that. Like, it's exactly what a Rex is about, observable streams of stuff, where this stuff could be actions. But some people don't want to depend on a Rex, or don't want to have their teams learn about a Rex. So they may want to use promises instead, which work for some cases where you have an eventual value and maybe an error, a failure instead of this value. But again, if you use promises, you may want to dispatch an action at the end, or maybe you want to dispatch an action in the beginning and an action at the end, and maybe you want them to have different types, and like begin, failure, success, or maybe you want to have a single type. So opinions, lots of different opinions. And every Flux library is opinionated here. So what we try to do, what Andrew suggested, is that we don't go into that business. That you know, if you want to have some fancy way of transforming your promises or observables or plain object descriptions of what to fetch or anything to raw actions asynchronously, you write the middleware and you hook it up just like in Core or Express. You have this middleware for actions. So you can use Redux Thunk if you're fine with like returning a function that has a dispatch as parameter, and it's up to you to dispatch like in set interval or after a JAX call or after a promise. It's up to you. It's like the most basic way of doing async actions. But you can also use something like observables or promises, and there are several styles of doing it. So it's up to you.
Okay, and so React Thunk is just an abstraction to make middleware a little simpler?
No, it's just, it used to be the default middleware that supported this async action form where you get a dispatch as a function and you are free to dispatch as many times as you like. So that's kind of the most basic middleware for async. And it used to be built in, but then we figured out that the API built-in middleware didn't play nice with Dev Tools. It's kind of tricky to explain to right now, but we figured out that we need to split it. We need to make it optional. So people don't even have to drag that code if they use promises or observables.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. So that actually, we just got a question on Twitter. Anybody watching who didn't hear it earlier, you can ask questions if you're watching live with the hashtag DX questions. That's DX questions on Twitter. So one question, and this I think relates, and I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but it's I think Sem to run. But the question is, could Redux 2.0 be based on observables, an event stream reduced like .scan in RxJS?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but then you don't need Redux because it's the same thing, right? Like, yeah, as long as you have a library like a Rex and you're fine with using it, you understand what scan means, you understand aggregation, your team understands how to deal with Redux streams, you don't really need Redux because, yeah, it's a few lines in Redux.js. But no, not everybody is going to take that as a dependency, both in terms of code size and in terms of the team, making the team transition to that. So Redux is super fine. You should probably use it. Go ahead, but you don't really need Redux in this case. But what Redux is also about is the ecosystem, like the reducers that are reusable across projects, like for pagination, for example. We don't have this yet, but I hope somebody is going to publish them, because if nobody publishes them, I have to write them. But I want to have some reusable utilities, and the Dev Tools is another example. And because they don't rely on contracts this much, they rely on they don't rely on specific APIs, they rely on contracts. If you do your own thing with Redux, you can probably reuse that stuff anyway. So there's no point to baking Redux into Redux. They're kind of orthogonal.
So you'd be able to use Redux Dev Tools even if you were using Redux? Is that what you?
I think you can do that. I mean, you'll have to write a small helper to bridge them together, but yeah, you can do that. But at the point where you write that helper, you probably have written Redux itself. As I said, it's seriously the core object in Redux, which is called store in 1.0 API, is the top-level object. Is the only exported class. Like they only export the factory. It's not really a class, but it is 50 lines, and I'm not kidding. It's 50 lines, so you can probably write them yourself.
That's awesome. I find that actually it's interesting. Lots of libraries that are more concepts and ideas than actual implementations
yeah,
can be pretty interesting and powerful.
Yeah, ideas are much more powerful. Concepts are much more powerful than actual implementation. The right contracts are much more powerful. And if people don't, if it's hard to get people on board with some concepts, you can maybe get them on board with an implementation. And it's kind of hype in a good way. Like, so some people are, come on, it's just hype. I mean, okay, if it promotes good concepts, then it's a good hype. It's a hype train you should jump on and help other people who are not yet sure if they can evaluate the concepts to jump on that. And they'll be able to jump off at any time because it's just really little stuff there.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's one of the things that I love about React is I feel like, and this is really applied to React, is React is a big implementation, obviously, but like the thing that I love about it is the concepts that it encourages, and statelessness and the composability and yeah, declarativeness. And so anyway, I think that's but like lots of people don't totally buy into those concepts, and so that's why there's just been so much push. Like, well, React is super crazy fast and things. But what really, like, I think it's cool that React is fast, but that's not what makes me interested in React. What makes me interested in React?
It's hard to sell correctness. It's really hard to sell correctness because people just don't believe that you can write better apps that don't exhibit weird bugs. It's just so hard to sell. But it's easy to sell performance or some technological gimmicks, and you know, if it sells, go for it. Like I don't see the problem here. And actually, you said about stateless, but I think actually the big selling point of React, and again, it's kind of close to this hype marketing thing. The big selling point of React is that it allows state. It just gives you like a contained way of doing state, so you don't do your own thing, which might not work as good. It kind of gives you the freedom to break away from functional paradigm when you're not sure how to use it, when you're not sure how to actually make that work in your app. And maybe that's because you lack some experience, maybe it's because your team lacks some experience, but it's okay. Like, you can jump out of it if you want. And I think it was a huge factor in React adoption. And it's really important to React that it doesn't try to be dogmatic. When something is too hard to do in a pure way, for most people when people are not educated enough, and I'm amongst the people who are not educated enough. Like React helps me educate one piece of it at a time. So it doesn't take the highbrow sense on it like, hey, if you don't know how to write stateless code, you're not welcome to this party. React doesn't do that. It tells, yeah, you can use that state if you want. Like maybe we don't encourage that, but you can do this. And it's a huge factor for React. And I think anybody who wants to build accessible tools accessible to most JavaScript developers, you need to give them these shortcuts and push education, like help them learn about better patterns, but still keep these escape hatches if they need them.
Totally, I think that that's a good point, and that last point that you made about being open and welcoming, having an open community is super important to, I don't know, just being nice, being a good community member. So we got another question, and I only scheduled this for an hour, so yeah, we're about ready to wrap up in the next 4 minutes or so. But this one's from Gary Borton, and the question is, Facebook is going to release Relay next month. How is Redux going to fit into this new context?
Yeah, it's a good question. It gets asked a lot. And I actually talked with Joe Savona in the React Europe, who is one of the people behind Relay. And he said, like, wow, we're so inspired with some ideas with Redux. And I'm like, oh shit, Relay is going to kill us. But, you know, it's not, they solve different problems in a way, although it seems like they're not. But Flux is not great for data fetching. This is what it gets used a lot for, because it's just how our state is mutated. It is usually through some kind of web interface. You have some kind of API, and something comes back, so it's a necessary problem. But it's not all that Flux is about. Flux is about mutating your models with an interface of action lock, immutable action lock. But it's not really about data fetching, and Relay helps fill that gap. And there are many solutions arising which are similar to Relay in spirit, which kind of do the same declarative data dependencies thing that Relay is doing. So it's really great that there is a lot of experimentation about it. But I think that as time passes, Redux is going to specialize in handling local data mutations, like the state of your app, the state of your UI, the state of, for example, if you have a complex post editor with drag and drop, or like a Facebook video editor, like they had something like this a few months ago, where you have this complex local interface that doesn't really have anything to do with remote fetching, but you just need to manage the complexity of data mutations. That's where Redux is really a great fit, and I'm sure it can work together with Relay and delegate handling some part of state tree to Relay. I'm not sure how exactly they're going to work together, because Relay is not out yet, but I know a lot of people are experimenting with GraphQL and with Relay-like approaches right now. I've seen a tweet from Jay Longster about his experiments with Relay-like approach with Redux. So I'm sure we'll see a lot of experimentation here. And I think Redux doesn't really try to solve data fetching, it solves mutations. So maybe these are two separate problems that can be worked on together in a single app.
Cool, yeah, that sounds good. So we are about done with the scheduled time here. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or explain that you think people may have questions about, or other thoughts that you had?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, go for it. I've got time, so I'm not time constrained right now.
I don't really want to explain anything, but I want to apologize for the README of Redux in the state that it is right now, because it's such a total mess, and people freak out so much about it, and I hate it so much, but it just accumulated over time, and I was busy with my talk, and then I was busy with shipping Redux Dev Tools. So actually, it's just now that I have time to work on the docs, and thanks to generous contributions to my Patreon, which I think it went to, it was fully accomplished in like 3 days, I think.
Wow! Congratulations.
It was really cool. Yeah, I was so excited. I didn't expect this kind of level of support from the community. But anyway, I'm going to work on docs. I promise.
That's great.
Don't give up just yet.
I know documentation is almost as hard as writing the library itself. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we appreciate your work for sure.
Okay. So thanks for being a great host. I really enjoyed talking with you today. And if you have more questions, feel free to ping me on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe it's Dan_Abramov, right?
Yeah. That's right.
So I'll link to that in the description so people don't have to search around for it. And if you have any, you mentioned a couple of talks during our chat today, so if you have any links to those talks, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I can do that.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to check one more time for any questions, make sure we don't miss anybody. Everybody's like about a minute behind us anyway, so yeah, I think we're good. So thanks. I really appreciate you taking an hour of your time to chat with me, and hopefully this was helpful for me. Hopefully it's helpful for other people later and now as well.
Okay. Bye
We'll see you
bye.
again. Bye.